RJ, is this the busiest pre-draft week we've ever seen in the NHL?
Yes. Best offseason ever. That was gonna be my opening question to you. So, I mean, yeah, I think we're in agreement, right?
Yeah, I can't remember a time that it was anything like this. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the free agency class being so weak. Everybody knowing that if you want to, improve your team and get better, you're going to have to go out there and do it on the trade market. And when are your draft assets at their most valuable? Right before the draft. So it kind of makes sense. It's I guess it's for that reason that it's kind of odd that we've never seen a week like this leading up to a draft before, where just multiple star players are on the move and a bunch of deals are happening. We get the first, we get multiple trades with top 10 picks. I like why doesn't this happen more often? It's not like free agency classes have been that great in recent memory.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're talking about like 15 years or so since we've seen anything like this. Well, Dylan, do you think it's because the cap's going up so much?
I
That has to be it, right?
It provides more flexibility, so I feel like more teams can be involved in discussions around stuff like this. Yeah, I do think that that is part of it. I think the cap going up with 0 free agents being available to spend that money on really is making teams feel like they had to get something done this week, and I do think that those early trades, particularly the Brady Tkachuk one, sent a message to GMs around the league that, like, "Look, if you do wanna get something done, you're gonna actually have to do it before the draft."
Yeah, and all of a sudden teams are willing to listen on that top 10 draft capital because they're confident they can flip it too.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think that's the big thing is, you in the past, if you're getting one of those picks, you usually can't flip it for something immediately, but now you can. And also, I think just so few of these teams have to worry about the cap implications of this deal. It's so much easier to just be like, all right, let's get this guy. We can make it work versus having to kind of crunch the numbers on every dollar and cent that you spend. I think that probably gave GMs a lot of pause in the past.
Agreed. Agreed. So, where are we starting, RJ? Because there's a lot of stuff to discuss.
Well, it may seem odd with all of the moves that have happened, but I think we should start with something that actually hasn't happened, a trade that hasn't happened yet, and one that fell apart, or I guess never really was going to happen, given that Jason Robertson didn't want to play in Seattle. But the bombshell report from Elliot Friedman last night that Jason Robertson apparently turned down a contract offer of 8 years by times 15 million, so like $120 million offer from Seattle as part of what would have been a sign and trade deal between the Stars and the Kraken. Apparently, the Stars and Kraken had worked out a trade already ahead of time that involved the Kraken's seventh overall pick in today's draft. The Kraken, after the deal was worked out, were then given permission to talk to Jason Robertson, try and work out a contract. They offered him 8 times 15. And sounds like Robertson turned it down. So, I mean, huge report there from Friedman. That's tough for the Kraken. That came out. Of course, we will go into huge amounts of detail on our next deep dive podcast on the Kraken side. But there are lots of other angles to this that I wanted to get started with. And I mean, I guess first, let's look at the fact that Dallas was actually willing to trade him because I'm surprised that it actually got this far. So Robertson and Dallas were reportedly kind of at a stalemate contract wise, about $2 million apart. Robertson wanted something in the $14 million range. Dallas wanted something in the $12 million range, according to most reports. Clearly, there was not enough common ground there that Dallas was really willing to look into a trade.
Yeah, which is crazy. Although, if the rumors of what Dallas was then going to do with that seventh overall pick are true, then it makes a little bit more sense because they were going to be able to go out and get a Jason Robertson replacement in the form of Matthew Nyes. So it sounds like this was really kind of essentially a three-team deal in which Jason Robertson would go to the Kraken, the seventh overall pick would go to Dallas, and then get flipped to Toronto in exchange for Matthew Nyes. I'm sure there were other parts of the deal, but that was the real framework of what this deal was. And that makes more sense to me, right? If Dallas is actually going to trade Jason Robertson, they have to be getting somebody back, right? They have to replace him in some way. And that's, virtually impossible just given what he means to that team and how good he was, particularly this last season. But Matthew Nyes would be a pretty decent replacement over there on the wing, cost controlled, good player, playoff player. Makes a lot of sense for them there.
Yeah, and that's the kind of scenario that we were saying that we could see with Dallas is going for a winger who is certainly a downgrade from Jason
Mhm.
Robertson, but somebody who's going to cost a lot less than him. I mean, in Nyes' case, about half of what Robertson would cost if he gets all the money that he wants there. And I don't think it's the worst move for Dallas. I'm just surprised that they actually were willing to go there. So I'm really curious about the dynamics between Robertson and Dallas here because I'm wondering, is this just kind of a game of chicken here? Because I still, I guess, question for you: where do you think Robertson actually wants to go? Because I think he probably wouldn't mind staying in Dallas. He just wants them to pay him what he wants.
Yeah, it feels like he wants to play for a competitive team. I've heard rumors this morning that it was he wants to play for a California team. I could see that. Obviously, he's a California boy, but I do think that ultimately competitive and win now is the thing that he is looking for, and that makes sense why he wouldn't want to come to Seattle and why he also reportedly turned down going to St. Louis because apparently there was also a package involving the St. Louis Blues trading for him, and he turned that down. St. Louis, not anywhere kind of close to contention, just like Seattle. So makes sense there. If he does want to go to a competitive team and or California, I mean, there's certainly two really good options in Anaheim and San Jose that he could choose to go to. The Kings are always kind of pseudo competitive. They're at least a playoff team that he could point to, unlike St. Louis and Seattle. And, you can then go with the California route, play with Panarin, I guess. But certainly if he's kind of like, look, I'll stay in Dallas if you pay me or ship me off to a San Jose or an Anaheim. I mean, again, there should be some sort of deal there that Dallas could work out. I don't understand why you don't just pay him the money. It sounds like, according to the rumors, that they're really hard on we don't want to give anybody more than Mikko Rantanen's 12.5. It's Jason Robertson. He's a homegrown prospect. You've had him forever. He's meant so much to your franchise. He's 26. Just give him the money. Like the cap's going up. You can find a way to make it work. You're going to have the Tyler Sagan deal coming off the books after this year. Just figure it out.
Yeah, and that is where it gets tricky, though. It's not like in a lot of teams situation where they can just make whatever money work, and it's a matter of, oh, we just don't want to go this high. They would really have to do some surgery to this roster here to make this work. Certainly at the $14 million level, like I- I don't know what exactly you do in the short term if you can't get rid of the Tyler Sagan contract. It's really difficult. Like it is actually tough to move around. There aren't too many guys where you look at and say that's the bad money. That's what you can move. Maybe Labushkin they try and make something work, but it is actually difficult in their situation
Yeah.
to make it work. I would still try and just sign him, give him what he wants. I know you also like worry about team dynamics and who's getting paid what and whatever. And I know you have Wyatt Johnson. It's a ways out, but you have him up in a few years. And then what does that mean for him and what he wants? But I think with the new cap environment, it's just going to be whatever it is anyway, right? He's going to
Yeah.
get star level money at that point. You can't worry about that right now. So I think they'll still. I don't know. Do you think they'll find a way to get a deal done? Like, how do you see this ending?
I mean, if they're going to trade him, it's gonna probably have to be before the draft tonight, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you want to be able to utilize any sort of draft capital you get back in exchange for then another player to go out and get. Because after this, I don't know realistically what your options are unless you're looking at a straight up trade, right? If you're looking at maybe a Jason Robertson for Dylan Larkin trade, maybe you can still make something work, or a Jason Robertson for Matthew Nyes trade, if that is even possible, you could maybe make something like that work. But for the most part, I feel like if you are trading him, it has to happen before 4 o'clock here on the West Coast for us, right? Like it kind of has to be in this time frame
Yeah, you are running out of time and it's not just the time it takes to get a deal done, it's the time it takes to get a
to
deal
get a
done and then
second
flip
deal
that
done.
pick to get a
Yeah.
second deal done because there's a second trade attached to it. As for the report, like, do you think, I don't know, clearly it seems like a lot of sides of this would not be happy that this came out.
Mhm.
How do you think, like, who put this out there?
It has to be Jason Robertson's agent, right? Because you want to show that there was a team willing to make him the second highest paid player in the league. That's the only benefit I can see from anybody for this coming out is just that it does send the message of, hey, look, Dallas fans, he's not crazy for asking for 14 from Dallas. There's a team out there willing to give him 15.
Yeah, I guess so, but even then it just doesn't, it's not the best look, especially if he ends up coming back to Dallas. That a trade went that far along and everything and that he turned, I still, I
Yeah, but
guess it
is
would
that
have to,
bad for
because
Jason Robertson or is that bad for Dallas? Right? Like, I
I guess
agree
it's
it
more
looks
bad for
bad for
Dallas.
I
Yeah.
agree it looks bad for Dallas. I agree it looks bad for Seattle. It looks bad for everybody but Jason Robertson, right? Like, he's the one guy who gets to control his destiny, and does anybody blame him for not wanting to go to a worse team?
Yeah. No,
If
I think
anything, he'll
that's
look like a hero if he takes less money to go somewhere competitive, right? Everybody will be like, "Ah, see, this guy cares about winning."
exactly. No, and I've seen I've seen a lot of as certainly being in the Seattle hockey scene, I've seen a lot of anti Jason Robertson talk in the last 24 hours. But yeah, I think it just comes down to wanting to be on a winning team. I think it'll ultimately end up where people will speak highly of him because of that. And look, he's a good player. He's
Mhm.
pretty choosy about what he wants. And he's earned the right to be. Like, he is that good. He can, and it's interesting too because we're seeing so many players. And I wanted to talk to you about, like, we'll get there with Tkachuk. We're seeing about the theme of players really exercising more autonomy about where they want to go.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's interesting because most of those guys have trade protection.
Yeah.
Robertson, I guess, just has a form of that in the fact that he doesn't have a deal and that he basically would need to agree to sign long term anywhere. But guys are finding ways to exercise this however they can.
Yeah, and that's a conversation probably for a less busy day, but the amount of trade
Yeah.
protection in the league, because I know that's becoming a topic of conversation. Here's my thing on Jason Robertson and Dallas. One, how realistic do you think it is that a team would offer sheet him?
Oh, that's a
Probably
good question.
because that becomes then the next deadline. If you get past the draft today, Dallas doesn't have to deal with anything because they don't, I don't know that they truly have to worry about an offer sheet just because anything in the range that Jason Robertson wants money wise is going to require so many draft picks that a team has to have their own of, and it has to be a team that Jason Robertson's willing to sign for, which probably means a contender, which means they probably don't own all of their draft picks that they need to, right? Because they've been trading them for other things. So I don't know how realistic an offer sheet really is out there for Jason Robertson. And then I wonder if you're Dallas and you can't work out a long term deal, do you go to arbitration with him and you just punt this decision basically in off season, or at least till the trade deadline, and you see what happens over the course of the regular season? Does Tyler Sagan get injured? You can LTIR that contract, and then you know what's going to be up, and you could re-sign Robertson, right? Like, I know he might not want to after arbitration, but still, I wonder about that situation playing out.
Yeah, I mean, on the arbitration front, you can't punt that decision because then Robertson has the ultimate leverage if he can just wait a year and go to UFA.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. You can't get in a Mitch Marner type situation. At that point, you don't hold the cards. You have to make a call on it now, one way or the other. But the offer sheet is interesting because that would be the other avenue Robertson would have. And it sounds like, again, money's clearly not the most important thing to him since he turned down the Seattle deal, but clearly it is important to him in the sense that he's turned down roughly 12 million from
12.
Dallas. Right. And so he wants more than that. And I think the reason that an offer sheet seems unrealistic to me is just because you look at the price for trading for him. Again, we don't know what that whole package was from Seattle, but I imagine for most teams, if the fact that Dallas was actually willing to make a deal here, they'd probably make a deal for less than the equivalent of 4 first round picks, or at least something that would make more
Mhm.
sense for an organization, right? And there are top 10 picks that teams are looking to move. So I think it's more likely a deal would come before the draft, before you get to the point where there's an offer sheet. That said, if it does get that far, if it gets past July 1st, I think a lot of teams should look into offer sheeting him. If Robertson is open to signing an offer sheet, which, I mean, given all of
Why
this,
wouldn't he be?
why wouldn't he be, right? And I think there are contending teams that should certainly look into doing that, that might have their own draft picks. I mean, I look at a team like Utah.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know if they're enough of a have made enough of a contender case for Robertson, but I mean, if I'm him, I look at that team, and certainly with him joining them, that has a great chance of winning and being a contender. Um, I mean, on a little bit on the riskier side, and I don't think the offer sheet makes the most sense as far as the route, but like, I think about San Jose, and that's
Mhm.
the team I come back to too, especially if he wants to be in California. I think what makes the most sense is, look, the Sharks have the ninth overall pick in the draft. They've got 2 and 9. And so given that there was reportedly a deal around number 7 to Seattle, I wonder if Dallas would listen to a deal around number 9 from San Jose, and probably involve 9,
Plus
27,
27, yeah.
and then maybe a prospect, because I think you'd have to add something in there. And look, if I'm Dallas, I would ask for Chernyshov, and I'd probably get rejected. If I'm the Sharks, I'd really think long and hard about that, but that would be my ask. Or I'd even go just 9 and Chernyshov. because I love
Mhm.
the player in Chernyshov, and you can flip 9 for whatever kind of winger you want there, like Matthew Nyes. I wonder if the Leafs would still do Nyes for 9. That might have to be worked out, but that's the deal that I could see.
Yeah, and if I'm San Jose, I don't know that I reject that, right? Like with Chernyshov,
927 and Chernyshov.
yeah, yeah, to get Jason Robertson, I guess it depends on like how serious were they about going after Bowen Byram. How much are they trying to accelerate this rebuild process? And there was actually a good article by Dom Lucian that just dropped right before we started recording about how long the rebuild process actually takes and why Chicago shouldn't have kind of jumped
Great
the gun
article. Yeah.
here. Yeah, and I do think like San Jose's kind of in this boat too. It probably doesn't make sense to go ahead and do this deal and jump the shark. But it's one of those things where if you're them, right, and you're drafting Stenberg, and that's why trading William Eklund made sense, and we'll get to that trade in a little bit. Go ahead and trade Chernyshov. Where's he supposed to fit in anyway, right? Like you're adding Stenberg, you're adding Jason Robertson. You have all the wingers you need. If that's what it takes to get a Jason Robertson level player to then go and play with Macklin Celebrini or Michael Misa, like, are you kidding me? I don't care. I don't care about Chernyshov at that point, right? Like you trade him. You love the player, but like if that's the price of doing business to get a legit superstar winger that then you'll have cost certainty around and is absolutely going to elevate either of your 2 young centermen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good argument as far as just like you know that he's a sure thing. He can elevate your guys. You have the cost certainty. You could go in and do that. As far as having too many wingers and like where is he going to fit in? Like you could never have too many skilled
I
forwards
I
on this
know
team.
that.
Like you
Yes.
look at the Panthers top 9 after the
Yes.
Tkachuk trade. Like that's the kind of thing that maybe not right now, but the thing kind of thing you will have to compete with at some point. Some team is going to have something that looks like that, and so you have to be able to compete with that. That's another reason where I'm like, you don't need to necessarily just move Eklund for the sake of moving him because there's no room if you get Stenberg. Like you can never have too many good forwards. So like I don't like that part of the argument. But look, if that's what it takes to do business, then yes, then you have to do that sort of thing. And I think you're not going to be worried about the cap implications. You've got all the cap space that you can spend, and you still have room for more big additions. It does make sense to me. And yeah, I probably wouldn't let Chernyshov be the reason that it wouldn't come together.
Because like what is Chernyshov's ceiling in terms of percentage of Jason Robertson? 70% of Jason Robertson?
Yeah, that's
Like
a good way to think about
realistically,
it.
right? You know what I mean? Like I think it's worth that 30% headroom.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. The real reason I might hesitate is because I mean, if you were hoping to use that ninth pick to either trade for a defenseman or draft a defenseman or
Yeah.
whatever, the blue line is still the major issue in San
Agreed.
Jose, and that's why they had maybe potential interest in Bowen Byram and all that stuff. Like they're probably aiming for a blue liner. This is not
That is
the
what I would
type
do
of
with it.
trade
Yeah.
I think they're trying to make. But if it comes up, you've got to look into it. But yeah, that's still the main issue is the blue line. I think that's easier to address. I think you
Mhm.
can find ways to do that. Like as I've said in the past, I think defense is very much a weak link type of thing where it's you're only as good as your worst defenseman, whereas forwards is a strong link thing. You're only as good as your best forward. And in that case, spend the resources on Jason Robertson to play with
Yeah.
Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah, no, and I think it only makes sense too because of Jason Robertson's age at 26, right? If he's
Yeah,
28, I don't do that deal at all if I'm San
agreed.
Jose, right? Like the timeline just doesn't work, but I think he's just young enough that you could do it and he'll fit in well enough with your core once they've fully matured and developed into their prime versions. I think it still works there, but otherwise I wouldn't do it. But yeah, I mean, anything else on Jason Robertson? We spent 20 minutes on him. There's still so much to cover.
Yeah, no, still a lot to cover. I mean, like we'll move on, but man, it's just interesting the drama of all of this. Can't wait to
Mhm.
see where it goes, and probably a lot of stuff developing today. Oh yeah, a question I was going to have for you at the top of the pod, Dylan. Over or under 1.5 trades that break during this recording. What do you think? Right now it's 0.
At 1.5, I'll take the under.
Okay, you'll take the under.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
I'll
only
take the
one
over.
will
We
do
we
it.
still got a little bit of time left
Yeah.
here. We got Burns and Kulak re-signing in Colorado. That's what just happened, but no trades yet.
Okay. Okay. What trade do we want to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about the biggest trade that happened. And
Okay.
it's the earliest one. It's the longest to go, but we've got to talk about Brady Tkachuk going to
Mhm.
the Florida Panthers. I think it fits in well too with all this talk of the draft capital in the top 10 being flipped. As I mean, huge deal for the Florida Panthers here. I'll go to the trade to kind of read it all out. But the Florida Panthers acquire Brady Tkachuk, reuniting him, or not reuniting him, uniting him with his brother Matthew Tkachuk. I guess reuniting if you talk about Team USA, from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for the ninth overall pick in the draft this year, the 25th overall pick in the draft this year that they acquired from Seattle in the Mackie Samoskevich trade, a first round pick in 2029, and a second round pick in 2027. So a bunch of draft picks. Senators trade their captain away to Florida. I mean, should we start with Florida's side of this or Ottawa's?
We could start with Florida's, because then with Ottawa, we could dovetail into the William Eklund deal and everything from
Good
there and
idea.
just kind of talk about them in totality. If you're Florida, I mean, look, we know all along long before the regular season was even over, and it was clear that Florida was not making the playoffs and they were going to be in the lottery and they were on track to have a top 10 pick. Everything out of Florida was, unless we win the lottery and are picking one or two, we're trading this pick for a player who can help us now, which makes all the sense of the world, right? Like, this was their injury step back year after being to three straight Stanley Cup finals. This is a pretty normal thing. They are going to be competitive next year. A player that is going to be 2 to 3 years away from legitimately being able to help their team doesn't make sense at all. So it made sense that this top 10 pick was always going to be moved. It especially made sense when it got pushed back to ninth overall, right? Like that then really made it make sense. So this in and of itself isn't too surprising that there would be a package built around that deal. And we knew we were going to get a top 10 trade just because of the situation Florida was in. As for getting Brady Tkachuk and adding him to this core, having, the ability to have him play with his brother on a team that already has guys like Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand, it's the ultimate playoff team. I pity anyone in the Eastern Conference that is now going to have to deal with Florida in the postseason, assuming that they're relatively healthy once they get there. This team is going to be absolutely brutal to play against. I think that it's going to help them win. They're going to be another staple in the playoffs next year. I think long term it might create some issues for them, but look, you've already won two Stanley Cups. This gives you the ability to potentially win another one. I don't hate it for that reason. I think after 2 years, I do wonder if having the Kachucks together and them feeding off of each other's energy, if things end up going sideways for you and having to deal with them. But I think you probably have a 2 year window. And realistically, if you're Florida, that's probably how long your window was anyway before you start trailing off. So, if you're Bill Zito, you got to go for it. And he went for it.
Yeah, this is a home run trade for Florida. I absolutely love it. Could not have done anything better with that draft pick. And yeah, they are dangerous. They're the ultimate playoff team. Look, I think as long as Paul Maurice is the coach, you don't have to worry about the Kachucks kind of feeding off each other. At least it going off the rails as long as you have Paul Maurice as the coach. I trust him as a coach to be able to kind of keep everyone
Mhm.
focused, keep everyone in line. I don't think it's going to be an issue. And especially with how much talent that you have on this team now and talent that can play that playoff style of hockey. Like, how do you, on paper, looking at it, how do you beat this team in a playoff series? I don't know. If
You hope they
everybody's
don't have a
healthy,
goalie.
yeah, you hope they don't have a goalie. I mean, that is the big issue we can get to with Florida. But I mean, look, as we've seen, let's get to it now. As we've seen with so many teams, look, Brandon Bussey, a waiver pickup, just won the Stanley Cup for Carolina. Freddie Anderson, who had like an 865, whatever it was, save percentage in the regular season, just helped Carolina to win a Stanley Cup. We've seen it so often in the past. Aiden Hill coming in and just making his miracle run. I could go all the way back through the
Mhm.
2010s. Like, you don't need a big name elite goaltender to win a Stanley Cup. Teams have done it. They've had it. Like Vasilevsky, he's great. Bobrovsky is great. Those are luxuries that these super teams could somehow afford. But you don't need that. You just need somebody who's going to make the saves he needs to make, especially with this team in front of him. Like, I'm not worried about the goaltending situation at all. And I think this is a much better use of resources than going out and spending big money on a goalie.
Agreed. I know. It's just that's the one thing. If you're an Atlantic Division team, that's that's what you were kind of that's what you're waiting on, right? Is like, well, maybe they'll just have really bad goaltending and that'll be our path forward through this, or you're hoping
Or
for injury essentially, right? Like, as I otherwise don't know how you're supposed to deal with this. How's Toronto, if they are able to get back to the postseason, supposed to deal with this team? They can't. How's Tampa supposed to deal with this team? Like, I don't think that they can. Certainly not with their blue line. I Montreal, like, there's no way that Montreal team,
No.
as impressive as a run they just went on, there's no way they can deal with this group. Buffalo, there's no way they can deal with this group.
No, I mean, Buffalo I wonder about.
You
They're the
do?
one team that's enough, and I mean, look, no, I don't think anybody can beat this Panthers team, but of all the teams you mentioned, I think they've got the greatest upside chance to do it. I don't
Ye
I It's hard to explain why, but I think just their upside when they're on their game.
yeah,
From watching them in the playoffs this year. Look, this watching this year's playoffs, like, really drove home to me how different of a level the Panthers are when they're healthy
yes.
and there than any of these other teams. The
Yeah,
fact that Carolina went through the rest of that
right.
conference and looked as dominant as they did tells me just how big of a gap there is between Florida and everybody else.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's zero chance for any of these teams. If Florida's healthy and they're rocking, it's gonna be insane. And I also think that this is the perfect landing spot for Brady Tkachuk, somebody who, you know, forgetting about the off ice stuff for a second, just when in terms of on ice, I've never been sold as being the franchise cornerstone level player, right? He's been a borderline point per game guy, and he does play a playoff style, and he can do all of those things. But I think that he's much better being the second or third guy on a team rather than the guy. And in Florida, he doesn't even need to be that. He can be guy 4 or 5 down the lineup. And I think that that's so perfect for him, and he'll be able to find his game and play kind of exactly the way that he's going to want to be able to play, certainly come the postseason time, rather than having all of the pressure placed on him and that forcing him to play in a way that isn't really suited to his game, right? Because he wants to be a guy that goes out there and starts a fight if he feels like his team needs it, and he wants to play on the edge. And in Ottawa, because he was their guy, and not just the leader, but their, arguably most skilled player and the player that they were going to have to lean on at times, he couldn't always do that, right? Like, that was part of the problem with him in Ottawa, was him weighing trying to be the most skilled player and being the guy that has to lead the charge offensively, while also trying to set the tone with his physicality, with his edge, and doing and leading through that. In Florida, he can just lean into the latter because they have other skilled guys. They got guys that are more skilled than him even. And so I think that that's going to be really good for him, because I feel like in Ottawa, he was always stuck between those two things. And that's partly why we never truly saw him reach the heights of what he could reach.
Yeah, I think he's a guy who's best suited, as you said, to be a team's not to be a team's best player, to be a second or third best player. And yeah, he won't even have to be that on this Florida Panthers team. I think you're right. I saw it said somewhere that he's someone who's always been overrated based on his name
I
and
agree
the
with that.
association with Matthew. I figured you would agree with that. But this is the perfect spot for him. Quick aside on this, because I've seen so many takes with the Kachuk thing and talking about player. I'll see if I can pull it up. I'll see if I can pull it up fast enough. But talking about players that basically they want to NHL players now. They don't want the pressure of the of the high
Of the
the high
Canadian
pressure
market.
markets, the Canadian markets, all that. I'm sure you've seen some of that reaction. I'm trying to
Yeah.
pull up the tweet that I'm thinking about. Um, but like, what do you think about all of that sort of thing? Because I understand Kachuk wanting to go play with his brother. I want to understand wanting to be in Florida, but there is an element too of I think the whole market thing is kind of nonsense.
I
But the
agree.
idea of wanting to be like the fourth or fifth best player on a super team rather than trying to be the guy for a franchise.
Right. I think that that's more of a unique situation to Brady. Right? Like, I just because I think that's kind of where he's at level wise, and again, he's a player that I think could be that guy if he really leaned into his skill set and just tried to be a power forward that tries to be a 100-point player. He could probably be a 90 to 95-point player if he kind of forgot about the edge element of his game. But he doesn't want to. It's clear that that's how he wants to play. So yeah, going to a team like Florida that's going to let him lean into that and he won't have that pressure makes a ton of sense for him. I also think that there's the levels of, look, he's so pro, Team USA and all of that kind of stuff, that him then being a captain in a Canadian market made things uncomfortable for kind of everybody involved. And so I understand that him wanting to go play for a US based team and play with his brother and all of that stuff. I very much understand that component of it as well. But I think that, again, that's unique to the Brady Kachuk situation. I don't think that this is an issue with just high pressure markets and guys don't want to play in high pressure markets. There's always going to be players that want to play in, the nation's capital in Canada, right? Like that's going to be something that'll be a draw at times when the team's competitive. Toronto is always going to be competitive. Vancouver, is always going to be a market that guys want to play for when they're competitive. We see it all the time with Edmonton, right? If guys are willing to play in Edmonton, the harshest or Winnipeg, right? If guys are willing to play in these
You're about to
markets,
say harshest winter, and then
I
you
was gonna
remembered
say like
Winnipeg
harshest
exists.
landscape in the NHL, and then I remembered Winnipeg exists. If guys are willing to play in Winnipeg the way that they have been because that team was competitive, I'm not worried about it if I'm a Canadian team, right? Like you're going to find guys. It's just that you're gonna have to, unlike maybe in the past, you have to compete with the idea that players want to play for a contender first, right? It's no longer enough that you're just a Canadian team and that the guy can come home and play for his hometown squad. You now have to prove that you give them a reasonable chance to win and be a contender and make long playoff runs. It's what we're seeing with Jason Robertson turning down the Seattle deal. It's what we're seeing with Brady Tkachuk here. It's what we're going to continue to see with players. And so I think the Canadian teams and the high pressure markets don't have to worry about anything as long as they're building contenders. If you don't have a contender, well then look, you have a bigger problem than just X player might not want to play here. You have to get your own house in order before you're going to be able to woo any of those guys anyway.
Yeah, and I think being in a Canadian market can exacerbate the issue of if you are someone who is a really good player but not good enough to be the guy, as
Mhm.
I think Brady Tkachuk is. And we've seen plenty of previous examples of that. I immediately think of a couple Toronto ones, but I look at
Yeah.
like Phil Kessel, who
Yep.
really, really good player, but he's not the guy for a team. Dion Phaneuf, really,
Mhm.
really good player, but he probably shouldn't have ever been the top defenseman for a team. It can be really tough in those markets, like when you have that pressure of just trying having to be something that you're ultimately just not good enough to be realistically. And then, in Kessel's case, you go to an American team, you don't have to be the guy, and you have a lot of success. And I mean, you think about like Toronto. I mean, I found the tweet. It's from Jeff Viette. Please do not call these NHL teams super teams. The guys teaming up do not want the pressure of living up to that name. They want to be paid big league money while getting beer league attention with house league responsibility. Those are strong words. And I think about like Toronto, like this recent Leafs build of like, that is one team that you could say, well, it's not necessarily pressuring guys to be better than they are. Like that you could argue they had kind of had that super team of the core four, right? That's a super
Mhm.
team type build. The depth is what let them down, but that's that existed in a Canadian market, didn't go well.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I think that that's a take on it, but I don't think it's the correct take, right? I
Yeah,
think that
just
that's
I
very
don't
much
agree with
a
it. Yeah.
guy out of town on his way out of town take, right? And you throw the parting shot at him. But yeah, I like I said, I think at the end of the day, players want to win. They want to win Stanley Cups. Brady Tkachuk, infinitely better opportunity to win a Stanley Cup in Florida than in Ottawa. That's
Yeah.
ultimately why you see this deal done. If things were reversed, Matthew would be trying to get to Ottawa, right? Like it wouldn't, I don't think it would change things, right? If Ottawa was a super team that had two Stanley Cups and Matthew was stuck in Florida, I think we'd see the same situation play out, but in reverse.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for those of us who lived through the early 2000s, 2010s Florida Panthers, like that's something we can totally imagine is,
Yes.
one of these players being stuck in Florida just trying to get to a contending team. So I'm with you on that. As for the Ottawa side of the deal, this is devastating for the Senators. And I know they turned around, they go and get William Eklund. Like I think, they'll try and rebound from this, but to only get futures in a deal like this, I think still at the end of the day, they were kind of forced to sell their captain for pennies on the dollar. They did not get fair value for the player that Brady Tkachuk is. And that's because even with 2 years left on his deal, he came out and with that trade protection, he had a full no move clause. Seems like he demanded a trade, gave a fairly short list of teams he'd be willing to
Mhm.
trade to. And we're starting to see this more now. The Sens didn't have a ton of leverage there, and they felt they needed to act quickly. And they were probably right that if the longer they had waited, that you couldn't really afford to even wait one more year, even though he had 2 years left on his deal, because we've seen how fast that leverage evaporates nowadays.
Mhm.
It's a different environment than it used to be. They kind of had to make a deal, and they kind of got shafted value wise.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly not going to guarantee be able to get a top 10 pick guaranteed out of him if you wait another year. And I do think that it's one of those that yes, in a vacuum, horrible return. Given the context of the situation, I actually don't think they did that
No, I'm
bad,
not
right?
blaming them.
Like,
Given no, they were
yeah,
put in a bad spot, and I'm saying that's what's devastating is just how
yes, it
bad of a
is.
position they were put in.
Agreed, agreed. So it's a new reality that I think teams have to figure out a way of navigating, which is just look, and it's not even just with team having trade protection, right? Like, yes, trade protection is everywhere right now in the National Hockey League, and that's its own issue at times. But like Brady Tkachuk, who else was going to trade for him, knowing that he kind of always wanted to go play for his brother, right? Like, let's say he didn't have it, and everybody kind of knew that he was going to be wanting to go to only a certain market, right? Like, nobody's trading for him, right? Like, the problem that teams have to figure out is just how do I build a contending team, right? Like, all of your issues are solved if you're just a contending team. You don't have to deal with this problem. And that's at the end of the day what teams have to focus on now more than ever is don't worry about making your superstar happy. If you just build a winning club around them, they will be happy. Right? Like, that's all you have to do. And that should have been your focus anyway. So that's my biggest thing with it. As for the actual trade return, I think they did not that bad, all things considered. I don't know why they didn't just then lean into going full rebuild mode. Like, why do you immediately flip picks for William Eklund? Like, so what? Now you're just kind of content to not really be a playoff team and just be a borderline playoff team. Like, I would have tried to move Timmy Stutzla this week and try to get even more futures.
Well, here's the thing though. You look at the core that you have, excuse me, and age-wise where they are. Like you have Tim Stützle, who is a franchise center for you. He's 24. Like these guys are just kind of entering their prime. Your
Yeah,
support pieces
Sanderson's
and like Pinto and
23.
Cousins. Sanderson's 23. Like you've already kind of done that and you've taken the step forward. Like you got to remember the context that Ottawa's had. They went through the pain of all that rebuilding and everything. They drafted their core of
Hmm.
guys, and just now they're starting to put it together. You cannot completely tear it down again at this point. I think there's no appetite for it in the market. I think it's probably not even the wise thing to do because I just don't think you can
It's
get the
true.
best value out of it. Like I think you have to try and pivot here and do something like what they did. And I do like the underlying stuff with the Senators. Yeah, I like what they've built. I do. I think you still need to kind of add to it, but I think that core, you just kind of keep trying to make big swings, keep trying to add another big piece. Um, and at the end of the day, too, you get William Eklund, and we can, maybe talk about that move too. But I don't know, given how Brady Tkachuk was playing for Ottawa, what we saw in the playoffs this year, and just, really over the last season, where I think it was kind of clear, certainly in hindsight, that he didn't want to be there.
Hmm.
Maybe you don't, maybe it's not as big of a drop off as it is on paper to a William Eklund, given what you could have expected Brady Tkachuk to provide in Ottawa.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess, and it's totally fair on the not rebuilding thing. You're right. You're probably right on that. I still think you should have been able to get a 20 goal scorer, right? Like somebody that legit is a 20 goal scorer in the National Hockey League and 60-point player, right? And I know William Eklund's come close to that on the points and he's come close to 20 on the goals, but like I still can't help but feel like you should have been able flipping 9 overall and the war chest that you just got. If these futures aren't going to really help you, I still can't help but feel like you could have probably found a better player than William Eklund.
Probably, but I think there is an element of panic to it where they want to do something right away, and I understand that. And of course, the pressure to do it before the draft because the value of that
Yes.
pick goes away immediately before you do that. But I think they're trying to get guys that fit in with the timeline. I think you could probably have gotten someone better than that, but could you have gotten someone better than that who's 23 years old and fits that core's timeline? And look, I think they tried to get someone better than that. It sounds like they were in on Jason Robertson
Mhm.
before it was clear that Robertson didn't want to go to Ottawa. Like I think they were trying on that, but then you also have the issue of okay, who's going to actually want to come and play here?
Yeah. I
It
I
may have
was
been the best option that they realistically had.
yeah, I was curious if they kicked the tires on Kyrou.
That would be an interesting one. The thing is, Kyrou again, he had a full no trade
I
clause. He had
know.
total trade protection. If you're Kyrou, knowing that you maybe have that option of Washington where he ends up going, or maybe some other options, like,
Is
would you rather
Washington
go to
really a
Ottawa?
better spot though?
Well, this is where I wonder again about like the Canadian market thing. And I not that Kairou's gonna like think about that sort of thing. Like it's not like the these US Olympic players or whatever that are thinking about it. But I do wonder. I mean, like, from Toronto area.
Hmm.
I wonder about, did he grow up a Leafs fan?
I don't know. Probably most, it's a safe bet to potentially make there. But that was
Yeah.
the player that I looked at and I was like, that's the one I would have really tried to get because I get you were never going to be in on Jason Robertson legitimately. He was never going to
Yeah.
sign with you long
Well,
term.
the other thing with Kyrou is the price for Kyrou ended up being higher than what I would have thought.
I agree, but I do wonder if you're giving 9 overall, if St. Louis is interested in that,
Maybe,
and they
but
just
I
have,
think
like, 5
McMichael was a
first
big
round
part of
picks
that
this year.
trade, though. Like, who's the McMichael that you're sending back the other way? Because I think that's something that St. Louis would have wanted as a player of that caliber, and like, who are you sending that way that works for them?
Well, I mean, one of the things that you could look at if you're Ottawa timeline-wise would be Drake Batherson, and then in which case
Hmm.
it's maybe not 9 overall, but 25, right? Like, Batherson and 25 overall.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, if I'm Ottawa, I'm really trying hard to get a
I
Batherson extension done. Like,
Yeah,
you
I
kind
know,
of need to do
I would be
that.
trying to do that too.
And even then, like, you look at Batherson, his production
Amadio?
versus Kyrou. Like, is Kyrou even an upgrade over Batherson?
No, I don't think he is.
So
But
then,
you
why
know,
does it make sense for you?
maybe like a Michael Amadio.
I would have rather have McMichael than Amadio for sure if I'm St. Louis. Like,
Yeah,
if I'm
but
St.
you're
Louis, I'd
getting
rather have
ninth
that
overall
package
too.
versus 16th. Doesn't make that big a difference to me. I'd rather
Okay.
have the player. Look, I just given their mindset, like, I think they're trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
not
for
get
some
worse
reason they're
here.
trying for it instead of seeing the writing on the wall that nobody wants to play for you and you have a million picks, maybe you should just rebuild.
Yeah. No, I see that, and
It's
this
the
is
most insane situation ever. Oh, it's driving me crazy.
yeah. No, I think St. Louis. I mean, we could. This is not the time to go in depth about St. Louis and everything, what they're doing. But I really think they've been convinced by how. Look, I think the Blues draft really well. Like,
They do.
historically, over the last 10 to 15 years, they draft really, really well, and they identify young talent really well. I mean, you look at the Broberg and Holloway offer sheets. Like, their scouting is really good, and I think that has them convinced that they can kind of do this whole, rebuild on the fly type of thing, retool. And I'm not entirely convinced that they're wrong. All like if Robertson was willing to go there, like, I think there's actually like the bones of something good here. You have a true 1C in Robert Thomas who's 26. Like,
Mhm.
I understand the temptation, locked in at long term at really good money. Like, I understand the temptation to want to go up rather than down. I really do. That's
Yeah.
it. I can't even say that I think they should bottom out. I don't think they should.
All right. Um, anything else on Ottawa?
No, they're just gonna have to try and regroup. I still like a lot of what's there, but it's just a really, really tough situation for that franchise to be put into. And then it puts that stigma over you too, just about players wanting out or players not wanting to play there, especially with the Robertson reports and everything that he didn't want to go there, and knowing that Kyrou maybe probably didn't want to go there. It's tough to deal with as a franchise, but they're gonna have to move forward.
I mean, look, it shouldn't come as a surprise because while things are definitely more on the rails now, this was just like 2 years ago, arguably one of the most dysfunctional franchises in the National Hockey League, right? Like it's not that long ago that you have the sale of the team. You have the arena situation that was very much up in the air at that point and wasn't settled. Like there was a lot going on
Oh, for sure.
with this team that made it very unappealing. And NHL players tend to be the last people to figure out when a team has turned a corner like that. So um, I don't know why that is, but they always seem to be built like thinking about teams like 2 years in the past. Whenever you talk to them about where a team is at, they don't seem to follow other franchises as closely as we would all assume that they would.
That's fair. And there was a lot of dysfunction there. So it's hard to kind of shake that and move past it. But I understand, but of course the team probably would really like to do that. And this makes it a
Yeah.
little harder to do it. So I get it. As for where to move next. So Dylan, we're up to one trade that has broken
Yes. Okay.
during this. Olin Zellweger going to Buffalo for Anton Wahlberg and the 45th pick. Wahlberg was the second round pick in 2023. So Zellweger over to Buffalo. The only guy on that blue line who's not like over 6'5", it feels like. So I don't know how well he'll fit in there.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a good contrast to what they have. But I say that just to let you know that you're close to losing on picking the under. I just need one
Yeah.
more trade. So I got to keep this podcast going for long enough for us to get a second trade, which should be no problem because there's plenty to talk about. How about we move on to, we were just talking about Jordan Kyrou in that trade. I
Yeah.
think let's talk about that trade, and then another move that the Washington Capitals made, as they are loading up here with, so they get Jordan Kyrou from the St. Louis Blues in exchange for Connor McMichael, Milton Gastrin, a prospect, and a first round pick this year. And then they do a sign and trade with the Buffalo Sabres to get Alex Tuch. So they give up a third round pick and David Kampf in order for the right to give Alex Tuch an 8-year deal at 10.5. Wait, was it 8 years or was it six? Yeah, 8-year deal. Oh
Yeah.
man, 8-year deal, 30-year-old winger, an 8-year deal at a $10.5 million cap hit, taking the biggest name out of the free agent sweepstakes, making it, guaranteeing it to be a very boring July 1st, even more boring than it was going to be. But the Caps are loading up here. And first question to you, Dylan, are they loading up to replace Alex Ovechkin, or are they loading up for one last shot at a Stanley Cup with Alex Ovechkin?
Uh, why not both? Right?
Yeah,
Like
either way, right?
realistically, that's what you have to do. You're either going to get Alex Ovechkin to come back for one more year, in which case you want to put as best a supporting cast around him as possible so that he can go out with a playoff run and stuff, or he's not coming back, in which case if you're not ready to tear it down and do a post Ovechkin rebuild, then you got to go for it. And this is definitely them going for it. Huge return for Kyrou. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, given
Way bigger than I
where
thought it was going to be.
where this franchise is going to be going here soon. And then also, I don't know that I agree with the Alex Tuch contract. I guess the biggest thing with this, RJ, is, I mean, who's playing in the middle, right? Like, let's say Ovi does come back. You've got a million wingers. That's great. What are you supposed to do at center? Like, Dylan Strome is still your 1C, right? Like, this is your team is built around Dylan Strome and Alexi Protas being your two centers. Like, I don't know that that's good enough. That even with all these wingers, you get to the playoffs probably, particularly in the Metropolitan Division, because it's not exactly the toughest division out there. But, like, I don't think you're really like, you're not building anything, and certainly in a post-OV world, this build is not gonna work.
It's not going to work to win you a Stanley Cup. I'll give you that. Like that, there's limitations to this build, but I think it's still a very solid playoff team. Like it basically gets you there, and then at that point, you're just hoping for a lot of things to break right your way. I mean, I did always think about the Caps as one of those teams, through the 2010s or whatever, that of course their best player is a winger and Alex Ovechkin, and wondering, can you win that way? And of course, yeah, it just does come down to the one year they actually get the center depth between Nicholas Backstrom and Evgeny Kuznetsov, that that all of a sudden it works out for you. Yeah, no, I don't think they're good enough down the middle. But look, I think as far as a direction, this is the direction you have to go. Certainly, if Ovechkin's going to come back for another year, and then even if not, just given what you've already built, you cannot easily tear this down. And that's why I don't have a problem with these moves. Particularly the Tuck one, I like for them. And I know, people who follow our Kraken coverage. I said, the day before it came across, because I wanted to get it out there before anyone did anything, that it would be the ultimate sign the Kraken had learned nothing, that they should definitely not sign Alex Tuch. I stand by that. The difference is, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Capitals, given the position that they're in, the fact that they're already essentially good enough to be a playoff team. They missed by the narrowest of margins. They are ready. They are that good. And just again, the timeline, like, you're trying to compete with the very last of Ovechkin or replace Ovechkin. You're not worried about the tail end of that contract. You're probably going to be deep into a pretty big
Yeah,
bill
you're gonna be
by the
rebuilding.
time that's over anyway. And again, the shifting dynamics of the free agent market, and with the salary cap going up, mean that it is far less bad to add players this way and overpay in terms of cap space rather than assets. I'm okay with it from the Caps perspective.
Yeah, the Tuck one actually bothers me less than the Kyrou deal.
Same.
Because the Kyrie deal, it's a huge return, and also, and you're talking about futures, because you're talking about a decent prospect in Gaston. You're talking about the 16th overall pick, which you could use to get somebody. I
Doesn't
that
fit with your timeline
and
though.
it
I don't
doesn't
mind them
fit.
giving up that pick.
Yeah, okay, but like, it's I don't know that Kyrie totally fits with your, like he does help your near term timeline, but then I don't think he helps your far out timeline, and I don't know that you'll be able to flip him for great value 3 or 4 years from now.
I mean, I don't think you need to necessarily flip him. Look, he's got what, 4 years left on the contract, 4 or 5. And at that point, look, at that point, I think you're starting to go into the whole, dark depths of whatever
For
rebuild
sure.
you're going to go into. And at that point,
You
so
just
what
don't
if you
even
can't get a
care.
ton of value for him? You don't even care. I think he's 28. Look, he's within that prime,
Yeah.
area for forwards. I think he fits the time. I don't even mind the player. I like the player. I like the fit with that team. And the whoever traded for Kyrou, I was so ready to praise that deal this offseason because I like the player. I think he's a great bounce back candidate.
Mhm.
Had one bad year this past year. All the previous years show how good of a player he is. It's clear this past season was the outlier. I just thought he was going to be acquired cheaply. And so I was going to like praise it as this great bounce back deal. But no, they definitely paid like fair value for him for sure. This is not a bargain type of deal. So I don't mind the player they're bringing in, but like how much of an upgrade is he over McMichael? That's the thing. I don't know, and
Here's
especially with given the positional value too of McMichael as center, like I think he is an upgrade, but how much is he a first round picks worth, like a mid first worth? I don't know.
well, and here's my question too is, do you think Kyrou plays center? Like, do you think they have him play center? And that's partly where they're seeing center depth.
Interesting. I
Because
hadn't
he
considered
can.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
obviously, he's listed as center, everybody's listed as center. Kyrou can be a center, but,
Well, here
like,
I'm gonna go
I
on
I
cap
I
wages
wonder
and use
about
their
that.
position tool. Yeah, no, he's no because it shows how much time they spent at whatever position. Like last season, 99% of his time he spent at right wing.
Right, right, but St. Louis had Shen and Robert Thomas. You're not playing
That's
Kyrou
true.
over those guys. I
Yeah.
consider playing him over Protus, especially if Protus wants out, which, like, there was rumblings of last year, right? Like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, then you're talking about a situation where it's like Dylan Strome down the middle, and, like, I don't even know who else for Washington after you move
Dubois.
McMichael. Yeah, I guess. Top 6 though, like, I don't know. So, yeah, that's something I wonder about is also if they experiment with that.
That's a good question. Yeah, I wonder about that too. And then your center issues aren't as bad. It doesn't look as
Yeah,
bad down the middle. And I get you still got wingers for days. You don't need to worry
yeah.
about depth on the wing. So, but yeah, I in all, I do like those two moves from Washington. I really like how they've operated the last few years.
I do too. I mean, like, look, they're making the most of a rough situation, similar to Pittsburgh. Like, I feel like
I
both
was gonna
those
say the
teams.
alternative is Pittsburgh.
Right. I feel like both those teams have kind of managed things pretty well, all things considered, where you have these true generational players. They're ending their careers. You owe something to them to not have them just exist through horrible stretches of rebuild. Right when they're in their late 30s, you owe it to them to kind of go for it and be competitive as long as they're there. And I think that both those teams are really handling that well in terms of trying. I guess a little bit better so in Pittsburgh case of trying to get younger still while maintaining competitiveness.
Yeah. No, I think so. I mean, like they've kind of bridged that gap well. It'd be interesting to see. I think the Penguins did try and just do the full on rebuild. It just didn't. The results just didn't happen for
No,
them
they
this
just
past season. Like I think they
yeah,
tried.
I
It
do
just
too.
didn't
I
work
think they
out.
tried too. And in Pittsburgh, it's never gonna look as rough as Mario playing on some of those horrible early 2000s Penguins teams. So you're fine.
Yep, exactly. So we've talked about a lot of forwards on the move. I think it's about time we get to some of the defensemen
Mhm.
that were traded. And we got to, okay, we'll start with Bowen Byram. I was going to ask you
Yeah,
which one we
no, we
should
gotta
start with.
start
We got to
here.
talk with Bowen
Most
Byram.
insane trade I've ever seen.
Yeah, I caught the start of your prospect chat where you just ranted about this. I kind of want you to recreate that and just go off on this because I agree with you completely. I'm not going to have a ton to add opinion wise on this. Dylan, what are the Chicago Blackhawks doing?
I mean, clearly they're trying to jumpstart being competitive. I all I can think is I mean, really two things. Kyle Davidson has feels like he's on the hot seat and that the team needs to take a step forward because ownership is kind of mandating that, right? Ownership is kind of tired of being one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. And he feels like if he wants to see the fruits of his rebuilding efforts, he needs to do something that makes them better this season in order to do that. What's insane though is you were just the second worst team in the National Hockey League. You Bowen Byram does not elevate you to any sort of near playoff contention, certainly not in the Central Division. Like, look at the division you exist in. He doesn't bring you anywhere close to that level. And to give up the fourth overall pick, a pick that could absolutely make you better, and a pick that, with the defensemen that are available in this draft, and given what we've seen out of Bowen Byram in two different situations now, two different competitive team situations in Colorado and Buffalo, where he still hasn't really been proven to even be a good number three defenseman. The idea that you would give up the ability to potentially draft a Chase Reed or a Carson Carls or any whichever defenseman you want, Keaton Verhoff, if that's your thing, to get a guaranteed number four defenseman on a good team is insane to me. When that draft pick of whatever defenseman you'd pick at the draft, probably 50% chance of having higher upside than Bowen Byram. Like, and I know that Bowen Byram's still young, and Chicago says he's still developing, and San Jose was in on it and potentially trying to give up picks 9 and 27 for him. And I don't understand everybody's obsession with Bowen Byram, but he has proven that at best he can be a 4D on a competitive playoff team. That's what he was in Colorado. It's what he was in Buffalo. And then when you dig into the advanced stats, something I didn't even rant about last time, RJ, he has to be unbelievably sheltered. Like, if you don't have him paired with a good defenseman, his numbers are horrendous. Like, genuinely, like, bad. Like, you don't even want him out there on your third pairing bad. Like, I don't understand what anybody's seeing here at Bowen Byram, and it really doesn't make sense for Colorado. Colorado is not one second pairing defenseman away from all of a sudden being a competitive playoff team, particularly in their division. This is the most desperate, I'm on the hot seat and ownership's breathing down my neck move that I think we've arguably ever seen from a front office in NHL history.
Great job. I think you're cooling down a little bit, but I want to get
I
you riled
am.
up again, because this is not just Bowen Byram, Dylan.
Oh, yes, it's
This is
Jordan
the
Greenway.
no.
Oh,
This is
okay.
the right. This is the right to pay Bowen Byram
I know. Oh my god.
ungodly
Who
amounts
you've
of
just
money.
handed
This,
all the leverage in the world.
and they don't mind that, by the way. If you hear Davidson talk about it, he's like, look, we got to put our money where our mouth is. He's not even trying to talk this down. And so I was thinking, are they going to pay him like 10 mil a year? Is it going up that high? Did you see the report from Darren Dreger?
No.
He said educated guess on that contract will be about a 4-year term and probably somewhere around 12 and a half to 13 million a year.
Worst contract in the league. Easy.
It
Like,
would be.
day
It
one,
would
it
be.
would be the worst contract in the league. And I think that that would be a pretty universal opinion.
Yeah. And there's some bad ones out there. That would be saying something
Mhm.
too. It would be horrendous. And then also, I mean, what does Bedard get? If Byram gets
Right.
12 and a half to
Like,
13 million.
Bedard, Frondette, like, at some point you're gonna have to pay all these guys, and you're setting the mark at that. Like, it's insane. Nothing about it makes sense. Like, again, the only logic I can find is a GM desperate to keep his job, and ownership that doesn't understand the situation they're in, right? Ownership that wants to be more competitive than they're ready to be. Those are the only two things here that make any sense for this whole situation.
Yeah.
And
And
Bowen Byram, who just gets to, like, be the luckiest guy around.
yeah, he is the biggest winner of the offseason. So there have been a lot of winners, a lot of losers of this offseason so far. Bowen Byram is the biggest winner of the offseason. I do not understand this. And Dylan, in the past on this podcast, I have defended the Blackhawks rebuild.
Yes.
I've still felt like the future was bright because I like the pieces that they have. Of course, Connor Bedard, but I really like Frondell, Nazar, even Lev Shonov. I think long runway for a defenseman like that to try and develop. I'm really starting to doubt it now. I still like those pieces, but clearly the thought process from the front office, and I think also probably the pressure from ownership, it's going to screw this up.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I look at them and I compare them to San Jose, right? And you look at, these are teams that both kind of started their rebuilding cycle at around the same time. And I do think that some of this is pressure because San Jose took a step forward this year. Anaheim took a step forward, another team that was very much in the same rebuilding window as Chicago. But I look at San Jose particularly. They get the first overall pick a full year after you do, right? Like, their bottoming out happens after Chicago's. but they get Macklin Celebrini, right? And this year they play better. But I look at San Jose and I say they have, I think, better prospects already than Chicago. They also have 3 first round picks in this year's draft, where Chicago now doesn't even have a first round pick. You were 31st in the league last year, and you don't have a first round pick in the draft. That is unbelievable levels of incompetence. Like, I don't care who you trade that pick for. Again, it doesn't make sense, right? Unless
I don't
that
know
player
if
is
you trade it for Jason Robertson,
if
it's
you trade
fine.
it for Jason Robertson, it's fine. But like that has to be the level of player you go out and get, not Bowen Byram. And that's the thing that makes this so difficult. And it was also pick 45.
Yeah, well,
Like,
that's like it's not.
it's
I know we can dig into this. If yeah, we're acting like also this is just was a
yeah,
straight up
straight up
trade,
fourth overall for him. Yeah.
but 45 also included, and also Louis Crevier, who I think is a
Mhm.
fascinating prospect. I know he's 25, so he's not much of a prospect, but on D it takes longer to develop. Former seventh round pick, but 6'8". So teams are going to value that. But I mean, he was still playing 17 minutes a night last season, put up 25 points in 78 games. Like that is a useful player that
Yes.
also is added to this.
Right. Like I just don't get it. And you get Jordan Greenway back, who like it's good power forward, I guess, good depth piece, but like I don't understand how he helped Chicago that much this year at all.
No, I think that might have even been like a capped
Capped
dump. I
him.
think I'm looking at 6 points in 40 games last season.
Yeah. No, because he's like he's a good playoff player, right? Like give me him as a depth forward on a playoff team, but like that's not Chicago.
I mean, you're hoping you can flip him for a fourth round pick at the deadline. Like that's
Yeah.
what you're hoping to do.
Yeah.
But you're adding to that. It's not just a fourth round pick for Bowen Byram. You have
Fourth
added to
overall,
that.
yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's insane. It's a ridiculous trade and I don't get it at all. I again, and comparing it to the other teams that you kind of have to be compared to, and that they're probably internally comparing themselves to in San Jose and Anaheim, and looking at where those two teams are versus Chicago. I, I mean, that being said, look, Chicago wants to rush this rebuild, not do it the right way. Fine, let them. I'm fine with that. But it's
Yeah,
just
no,
crazy.
I don't need Chicago to be good. Certainly not, remembering the 2010s. I don't need Chicago to be this great team again, but I still had defended a lot of what they were doing in the rebuild. I think the future could have been bright had they just stayed the course a little bit longer. But this is going to be a big problem for them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's gonna be tough, especially. Yeah, no, there's just no way. There's nothing that could be good.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to the last big defenseman trade, and that is Shimon Nemec getting
Mhm.
moved from New Jersey to Calgary. This one just kind of makes a lot of sense. On it makes sense for New Jersey to move him. They get a pretty
Yeah,
good return. They get Vegas's first round pick in 2027. That's probably going to be a late pick. Colorado's first round pick in 2028, still probably going to be a late pick. Rangers second rounder this year, and defenseman Etienne Morin, and also Siplikov going to the Flames in that deal, but that's just a minor piece. It makes sense for New Jersey to move him. They were going to move him. As for Calgary, like they just have so little in terms of young players, prospects to look forward to. They're really just at that start of the rebuild. They can give Nemec the opportunity to succeed. They can give him a ton of ice time and just chances to see what they really have in him. I don't mind it.
yeah, I don't mind it either. The other thing I wonder about with Calgary is, does this also make it so that you can trade Zane Parekh in a year or two if things don't work out between you and him, right? There's already been some friction there with comments Zane Parekh has made about the locker room there and that not going over well. And while I would absolutely be taking Zane Parekh's side if I was Calgary and putting my eggs in his basket rather than a bunch of guys in their mid 30s, they probably won't do that, and so I do think it's one of those that if that friction continues and it starts hampering Zane Parek's development, having Shimon Nemec as somebody that you can, say, look, we have a young puck moving defenseman with a lot of high draft pedigree. It just makes a ton of sense. Like that to me just makes all the sense in the world. So I think he's an insurance bet on Zane Parekh, as well as somebody that they can just bring in and help. It does mean if you have both of them on the back end, you just have to focus on acquiring forwards moving forward, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean they're on D, they're looking pretty good and solid setup for the future. It's just, yeah, the forwards are really where they need to focus there, and I'm sure that's what they're going to do. It'll be interesting to see what they do tonight in the draft and
Mhm.
kind of where they go, because probably best player available at that point may very well be a defenseman. Do you add another one to that group that you have? It's not the worst thing in the world because you're just so far from coming out of the rebuild at all. You just want to collect talent wherever you can. But we'll see kind of where they decide to go positionally. And it'll be fun for Flames fans. Again, there's just so little to enjoy or
There's
look forward
nothing
to
fun
watching
about that
that
team.
team. That's another young player that you can focus in on and be like, okay, this could be one of our future core pieces. That'll be fun to watch next season.
Agreed, agreed. So yeah, and on the Devils side of things, I mean, you move on from a player that you kind of haven't been able to deal with properly, um, and you get futures that they don't have a ton of value, certainly not right now, but as those drafts get closer and stuff, you have ammunition that you can use to maneuver around. Maybe try to use them to go get a Quinn Hughes if you can. I'm sure
I was
that's
thinking
something that
that.
they're very much considering. So I think it works out for them as well. And I also wonder if this is also to help make room on the roster for Silyev to come over from Russia, somebody that they drafted high, plays D as well. So just
Yeah,
kind
I
of
would have
clears
to
out
think
room
that.
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured Silyev would be a kind of a driving force behind this as well. So I like it for both sides. Win-win. Not too interesting. Not as interesting
Mhm.
as Chicago getting absolutely fleeced, in the
Yes.
Bowen Byram deal. But just yeah, solid bit of
If
business.
if you're the GM of the Chicago Blackhawks, stop dealing with Jarmo Kekalainen. You
Yes,
make
that.
him look like the best GM in the world every time.
Yep. And you know what? I always say so much of being a good GM in the NHL is just finding the bad GMs and just trading with them over and over
Mhm.
and over again. That's the best thing you can possibly do. So good on Yarmo. Good start to his Buffalo tenure there. And yeah, we'll see if that number 4 pick gets moved. I guess last bit of chatter, just the draft tonight.
Yeah.
Like, what are you expecting? What do we think we're going to see? I think it seems pretty clear we're going to get McKenna at 1, Stenberg at 2. Beyond that, a little bit more mystery. I mean, Dylan, call your shot right now. Top 5 picks. Go.
McKenna Stenberg for sure. I mean, Vancouver, it's so interesting, right? Like, I still think they should go center. You got to take Malholtra. I get that maybe it creates an uncomfortable situation given you just hired his dad to be your head coach, but I just think the opportunity to draft franchise centerman is just it's just not something that happens every day, and you have to take that opportunity when you can, and you have to go for it. I think you have Zeev Buium too. So if you don't feel as much like you need to draft a defenseman there, so I think they should go Malholtra. Whether they do or not, I guess remains to be seen. At 4, Buffalo, like I still think Buffalo's probably trying to move this pick. Like given you lost Alex Tuch and now Bowen Byram, and you have the 4th overall pick, like that doesn't fit your timeline at all. So I have to assume Buffalo's trying to move 4th overall. So it kind of makes it difficult. If they keep it, they just take best player available, right? Like it because it's maybe a prospect that then you're going to trade later. In which case it would be Chase Reed, and then at 5, I think the Rangers taking a defenseman, probably Carson Carls. It sounds like that's the direction they're leaning.
Okay. I'll go my top 5: McKenna, Stenberg, Malhotra. At 4, I'll go Vigo Bjork, whether that's
Okay.
Buffalo taking him or I think more likely a team trading into that pick and then taking him there. And then the Rangers go and Chase Reed.
Yeah, that makes sense. It'd be huge if Chase Reed fell to 5.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that
that'd
would
be
be
that'd be a
wild.
huge win for the Rangers there. So I think
Yeah.
they'd be quite happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, do you who even makes sense to trade with Buffalo? Like that's the thing
Yeah, I
I've been
know we
trying to
could look at
figure
that.
out.
Well, because
Calgary, right? If you really want Vigo Bjork, you can move up from 6. Like I don't know.
I guess, but then I mean, is that really productive for Buffalo though?
No.
Just to get a little extra, whatever. I think they'd love to just move that pick outright for something that can help them right now.
Hmm.
I mean, they basically got their Bowen Byram replacement while we were recording in Zellweger,
Right.
and you still need an Alex Tuck replacement or just maybe something to look at, the best
Matthew
forward I can get.
Nyes.
I mean, maybe Matthew. That'd be that'd be an interesting trade between Toronto and Buffalo. But yeah, I don't know exactly where they go with it. I know I've seen like stuff swirling around that that Kyle Dubas and the Penguins really like Vigo Bjork and would love to trade up there to get him. I don't know what they could possibly
Yeah.
give in a package that would make sense. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what
I,
they. I At some point, this game of musical chairs with the top 10 picks is going to stop,
mhm.
and I think someone's going to be left holding a pick that they don't really want.
Yeah. Do you think San Jose moves up from 9? Like just because like look, at 9 you get a defenseman, but at 4 you get your defenseman, right? And like
Yeah.
that could be something like I wonder if San Jose packages like 9 and 27. The problem is Buffalo doesn't
What is
want
Buffalo?
9. Like they don't
Right. That's
want
saying
that.
Buffalo
You
doesn't.
would have
Yeah, they have
you'd
no
have to
incentive to get
send
9.
you'd have to
I mean,
send somebody. I
what
don't
would
even think a
Buffalo want?
Chernyshov would like make
No,
sense.
I was like, what would Buffalo want for? I was like, just for 4 from San Jose. There's nothing really
There's
that makes
nothing there.
sense
Yeah,
because
no.
it'd have to be like one of their top prospects, and at that point, you don't want to move somebody.
Mason McTavish, because he's the one other guy that's still
Oh,
rumored to potentially move before the draft tonight, and we didn't talk about, but a package around Mason McTavish.
maybe. I mean, that'd be a great deal for the Ducks.
Yeah, it would.
Get another top 5 pick.
They reportedly don't want futures though; they want an actual roster player. But
I understand that, but it's a different level of futures when you're talking about like a 4th overall
I
pick
agree.
that's in the draft tonight. Like
Yes.
that's someone who can't, maybe not next season, but the season after, like can be on your
Yeah.
team. I would be flexible on something like that. It'd be
Yeah.
fantastic value for something around McTavish, I would think.
Right. I think they're wanting to do a McTavish for Larkin trade realistically. I don't know that that's going to happen, but that's something that if I'm Buffalo, I'm looking at Detroit and I'm saying, "Look guys, this probably makes a lot of sense for you."
Yeah. No, I would think so. No, for sure. I mean, I don't think you're gonna get a whole lot better than that. I really do wonder. I mean, that's the other thing we're gonna find out too is what's the Larkin situation? How little leverage do the Red Wings actually have? Has he expanded his list? Like, where is he going? That's a big domino. I think Vegas is gonna be a big player there. They've been awfully
Mhm.
quiet.
They
They've
have
been
been.
very quiet so far for a regular offseason. I
What are you
think they're
talking
gonna
about?
make their splash
They put
at
out that
some point.
incredible statement to fans that they want to continue to be competitive after making 3 cup finals in 9 years.
Hey, you know what? I love the mentality. It's never good enough. You know what I mean? Always advance, never retreat. I respect
As they
that.
go into season X.
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know about that.
That is the most 90s NHL stuff I've ever heard. Late 90s. That's something that we would have heard back then. But yeah, interesting. Did we prolong it long enough? I've been helping you here.
I know,
I've
I
been
know.
helping you.
I have been trying to stall until we get another trade. But no, we have not gotten another trade yet. So unfortunately, yeah, no, I don't think we can wait around until we get the next one. Doesn't
Yeah.
sound like there's anything brewing, but
Well,
I'm sure we will see plenty before tonight.
yes, definitely. It's going to be super exciting. And you know what? The long form factor that the draft now exists in with the decentralized draft and how long that first round can take, there's going to be plenty of time. Teams really have until a full hour into the draft to make a call on pick 4, probably.
Okay, how? Yeah, so I think it's going to be shorter the first round than last year. It has to
It
be.
has to
It
be.
just has to be. Everyone knows it was a problem. They're going to try and do something to fix it. But how much shorter? Like, is it going to be meaningfully shorter? Are we going to, at the end of the day, say, "Oh God, that was a disaster," just like last year, or are we going to say, "Well, okay, they
They
tweaked
fixed
some
it.
things, they shortened it up, they fixed it." What do you think?
Yeah.
It's the
I
NHL, so I would never like bet on
I would
them, but
bet
on
I was
this
going
one,
to
I feel
say.
like they might be able to because
I
it
do
was so
think
bad. They might fix it. It's so
yeah, I do
fixable.
think I think it's so fixable that they will fix it. Yeah. I think that I agree with you. So we'll see. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this episode of the Red Glare podcast. So much to talk about. There's gonna be so much to talk about again next week. Really looking forward to it and really looking forward to tonight. Take care, everybody, and we will see you all next time.